Hey there and welcome back to another win or lose video. And today we're going to be talking about episode 6, Mixed Signals, which serves as a bit of a companion piece to episode 5, Steel, which follows Ira, the lonely little brother of team member Taylor, who has a mighty imagination. Here though, we follow the character of Ewan, who in the course of Ira's episode had started to date Taylor, only for it all to end in tears. Now I expected this episode would likely pull a Rochelle and Vanessa. During the course of Rochelle's episode, her mother Vanessa seemed like she completely sucked. She clearly loved her daughter and family, but from the perspective of her daughter, she seemed so irresponsible, so flighty and self-centered. It really sets you up to dislike the character, only for Vanessa's episode to showcase the struggles that Rochelle never gets to see, and make her character extremely sympathetic overall. Which leads us to Ewan himself, right? In Laurie's episode, he's made out to be a massive bully who openly mocks her and makes a cruel meme video showcasing her less than stellar softball skills. In Ira's episode, he picks on him and pushes him around and all the while tries to woo his older sister. He just seems like he sucks. So you'd expect that this episode would rehabilitate his image somewhat, right? Well, it doesn't really though, not in the same way that Vanessa's episode does, where you come away from it and view her in a whole different light. Because at the end of the day, despite his somewhat cute inner voice, he still makes every possible mistake. He ignores his inner self, his true self, and he ruins things and acts very badly. All his issues are of his own making, just like Frank. Unlike Frank though, his episode doesn't end with this realization and thus a desire to change for the better. It ends with him falling back into bad habits and acting in a toxic way before realizing that he's just ruined it all. That being said though, at the same time I came away from it really liking him, even if he was an arsehole and brought all his problems down on himself. He was very likable. On top of that, he was a very realistic portrayal of a young teenage boy. Speaking from experience of when I was that age, nothing was worse than feeling like you were being laughed at or being cringe, as if people were looking down on you. Often this would cause you to lash out and lose your temper or act cruelly. Which is exactly how Ewan behaves across the episode. He doesn't want to open up or be vulnerable. He doesn't want to expose himself to ridicule, and so he acts the part of the arsehole. Once again, it's just top tier writing from Pixar. They're firing on all cylinders with this one. Enough preamble though, we have an episode to watch, and so with all that being said, let's jump into it. We start off the episode once again at the playoff game, where we get a very Ewan-centric view of it. In this version, he's pretty much a sports anime protagonist. He's full of charisma, the whole crowd's come to see him, they're chanting his name, he calls out his special move, the Ewan Special, and when he pitches, the ball has a purple energy field around it. Nobody stands a chance against him. It blows them away, zaps them, snaps their bats. Instantly, the expectation is that this is going to be the theme of the episode, following a dude that is unapologetically arrogant and who views himself as top shit. He even has his own roar that he does. Dude's lifted straight out of anime, but then somebody manages to hit the ball back and he ducks out of the way of the return, which is where Taylor enters the picture and catches it. To hide his embarrassment at having to dodge, he banters about how he'd been carrying the team and that he needed to give the other players something to do. And Taylor meets his banter in kind, which is where the facade of his outer persona slips away and we get our first look at Ewan's true self. An inner character who comes across as a small child's arts and craft project. He lives in a little love heart made of cardboard and looks like he's a cartoon character. Oh, I love this. Feels very true to life, where a lot of people that come across as mean, cruel, or arrogant are at their core largely unsure, insecure little children. A big part of that sort of mindset is that when they feel embarrassed or bad about themselves, they redirect that and try to steal attention or lash out. In the dugout, when he sees that Taylor and Tom are having some banter, he instantly gets jealous and tries to get the attention back on himself by whipping out his phone and trying to get Taylor to talk about how much she likes him. Instead, she teases him for being bottom of the batting lineup, which I suppose would suggest that he sucks at batting, and thus his inner child starts to cry, whilst the outer self laughs it off, but then he redirects it by filming Laurie. So it actually adds a lot of narrative depth to what's going on. When you watch Laurie's episode, and then for me, even on my first watch through of Ewan's episode, I figured he was just being a dick for the sake of being a dick. But it actually dawned on me in my second go-around that, as I said, he's doing this for a reason. He's lashing out at Laurie because he feels bad about his own skills. By highlighting somebody who's just as poor as he is, he redirects the attention of his peers and lets them feel better about himself at the same time. It's his outer shell lashing out, even if his inner self knows what he's doing is both cruel and unnecessary. I mean, we see the little dude freaking out when Ewan approaches Laurie to rub it in her face. It goes against who he is on the inside, but he can't help himself. He's at the mercy of the outer shell. Of course, it all backfires on him because then Rochelle comes over and yells at him in front of everybody. She declares that he is not funny and verbally eviscerates him in front of the entire team, which shatters the outer shell. Much like in real life, when somebody who is a force of will is able to shatter that outer layer, there's going to be no lashing out, no attention seeking, the inner self is going to briefly take control, and the inner child loudly proclaims, "He likes Taylor." It's only for a moment until that outer self can once again take control and try to salvage the situation by acting all cocky and confident, strutting up to Taylor and asking her out on a date. After a very long pause, which is clearly all in his head, she says yes, and it's off to the races. We cut over to that evening, where Ewan's confident front is firmly in control, spraying himself with copious amounts of body spray, which felt very accurate to real life. Back in the day, the boys' locker rooms would be overrun with the ubiquitous fragrance of Lynx body spray, or Axe body spray. Moving on, he arrives at the cinema, and instantly his outer shell's cracked by Taylor, who outright tells him to stop putting on this front as they head in to watch the movie, where we have a very funny scene, which in my eyes very accurately portrayed the feeling of those first steps of a romantic relationship, both in how epic and yet scary it can feel to take risks and read signals and all of that stuff. My god, Pixar just can't miss with this show. Whoever wrote it just gets it. They just understand life. Once again, I'm sitting here mourning that there will be no continuation of this absolutely incredible show. The concept is just banger episode after banger episode after banger episode. Damn it! They need to make a new studio for this type of content if they won't let Pixar do it anymore. The mid part of the episode is pretty much just a compilation of Ewan slowly coming out of his shell and learning to embrace his inner self, to be a new and improved version of Ewan. When Taylor asks him after school to help her practice since she wants to be a catcher next season, whilst he is open to helping, at first, he does so patronizingly, giving her extremely softball pitches to the point she's ready to storm off. Seeing this though, and not wanting her to be angry, he gives her a proper pitch, which leads to a hilarious sequence where he gets an epic moment montage as they have their first kiss. The Obama mic drop, what the hell? I love it. The music for this part was top tier as well, really tied it all together nicely. Then we cut to that day where Ira and the bleacher creatures set off those fireworks at the softball field, with Ewan and Taylor having a chat on top of his mum's food truck. We get a little bit of information from Taylor that she's worried about her little brother, who she claims is struggling because he's been hanging out with the bleacher creatures. I found this interesting because, from the perspective of Ira, she doesn't seem to care, and he's having a grand old time at this stage of the game. Yes, he feels guilty about stealing from the snack shack, but for the first time he's found people that truly accept him for who he is and don't view him as annoying or weird or a burden. She doesn't seem to understand that though. And part of me does think that she still just wants him to be her little brother, to be played with and hung out with when she wants to. I think there's a little bit of jealousy of him moving out of her orbit. Continuing with this emotional growth, we see Ewan make a choice to expose his inner self to Taylor. What I liked here though, is that it isn't just an easy thing for him to do. We see him struggle with it, and that his outer self, the protective shell, takes control to try and create that emotional distance. Taylor once again reacts poorly to that, which allows him to try again and reveal who he really is inside. The first time he's done that to anybody, not even his best friend Kai. This prompts Taylor to reveal her inner self, which is very cute, and she moves into his heart. We then have a cuteness compilation, where over the course of the week, Ewan and Taylor get closer and closer. As they do so, the world inside Ewan's heart grows from a single room to a whole labyrinth, a big mansion, a place for these two little people to share, showcasing the idea that if you open your heart to somebody, you stand to gain a lot more than you had before you did so. That if you're true to your inner self, you become a better person, as opposed to trying to be something you're not. This allows Ewan to embrace who he should have been from the start, to the point that his best friend Kai tells him that she prefers this new version of him. Hell, they even get to the point that within a week, they are wearing matching clothes, and he's every bit the gentleman. The new Ewan. But it can't last. Because they encounter something that many couples do. Jealousy. A week of personal growth is not enough time to mature in a lot of ways, and so when Tom starts talking to Taylor in the hallway, Ewan starts to see things that aren't there and overreacts to everything going on. It starts with being rude to Tom, who, judging by his and Taylor's words, is going through something at the moment. Something to do with his brother. Ewan then starts to take things out on Taylor, which in turn leads to them being at odds on the night of the big game. And so now that he's feeling jealous and upset, what happens? Well, his inner self loses control of everything, and his outer shell, the asshole version who likes to make fun of others to make himself feel better, starts to gain the upper hand. At first, we're just dealing with cold silences, but when he overhears Tom saying that Taylor thinks he's insecure, it causes him to lash out in anger to try to redirect everybody's attention away from him and his feelings of embarrassment and onto somebody else instead. This time, though, the victim is Taylor. So what are his crimes? Well, he openly says to everybody that Taylor wants to replace Rochelle on their team as the catcher. And then after the coach gives her the shot, he uses her own confessions to him, her private confessions, against her. He tells her in front of everybody not to get nervous, not to puke, which she does when she's nervous, which she confided to him. So pretty much he does the exact thing that he was nervous that she would do. He asked her if he could trust her with his true self. In the end though, she couldn't trust him. Damn. Yep, dump him, Taylor. Don't take this clown back. Especially because afterwards, he goes on to publicly humiliate her at the actual game by ignoring her request for pitch types, and also nails her in the head when she clearly wasn't ready. But here they are, in the 7th innings, and he's just being a prick, to the point that she publicly dumps him and storms off the pitch, which allows the other team to get their loaded bases home, with Ewan too busy having a crisis to notice anything, which leads to the other team overtaking them on runs, which in turn, I suppose is going to lead into Laurie's big moment when I went back and checked, because that's also the 7th innings, but with higher scores, and will lead them to win the game, I suppose. Thus, when you look at it, whilst it is a pretty bleak ending to this episode, if you tie it into the ending of episode 1, which seems to be set afterwards, it doesn't seem quite so bad. Well, except for the relationship being in the shitter now. But yeah, well, that's not coming back. Taylor's not there cheering on Laurie, so I think she actually left. Yikes. Once again, we have an absolute masterclass of an episode that I just loved. A very visceral and realistic look at the mind of a teenage boy that leaves you feeling conflicted. They got so much depth across in his character and the way he interacts with the world. And so you're left liking this guy, but also thinking he deserved what he got. I'm not ready for this show to end. But until next time, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.